You smile and stretch out on the bed, still basking in the afterglow from the last time Kylo Ren had had his way with you. It was getting better. You weren't quite sure how, but the sex was definitely getting better. Maybe it was because you had told him you loved him so often now that the air between you was suddenly charged with the intense emotional connection that you had previously kept hidden. Kylo Ren still had not verbally returned your affections, but you could tell by the way he held you at night or grunted your name in his sleep as he pulled you close to him that he cared for you, deeply. He didn't say those 3 words, but for some reason you didn't care. You knew what he felt towards you, and he was kind to you, and that was enough to keep you happy. Until one day, a day that seemed both very far off in the future and yet much too soon, when Kylo Ren stormed into your apartment. You could hear him raking in frantic gasps of air as he pulled off his helmet, and you quickly scooted off the bed from where you had been resting and cautiously walked out into the living room to greet him. There you are. Kylo closes his eyes and lets out a deep breath, and his eyes look almost panicked. This was not an expression that you had seen him wear before. Here I am, you reply uncertainly. He rubs at his forehead with one gloved hand and doesn't answer right away. Kylo, what's wrong? Are you all right? Did something happen? I fear a rebel attack on the base is imminent, he says softly. I no longer believe it is safe for you to be on base. I have a pilot on standby outside to take you back to your home planet. Please stay there. You should be safe. You grab his arm, your breath hitching in your throat. And what about you? He turns back to look at you, and a shy, sad smile graces his lips. It makes your heart twist, and you realize you're fighting back tears. I know you have to stay, but... You have to say it. It doesn't matter how childish it sounds. I don't want to leave you. You can't fight the tears that are pooling in your eyes as he rips off his gloves, letting them drop to the floor. He takes your face in his hands, which feel warmer than usual, as he pulls you close to kiss your forehead. He whispers your name softly, wrapping his arms around you as he rests his chin on the top of your head. I won't go, you say firmly, your voice muffled against his chest. I don't want to leave you. I can't. You need to. He takes your hand in his and guides it up to his cheek, where he lets your fingertips rest against his temple. You let your shield slip a little as you feel an immense wave of fear pass through you. His fear. He's worried about keeping you safe, but it's more than that. Beyond the fear is an erratic mess of emotions, ranging from worry to an intense apprehension that almost borders on panic, and you know right then that staying on this base, he's not going to be able to focus on whatever it is he needs to do if he's worried about protecting you. Right now, you are a weakness to him, and that is something you never wanted to be. You close your eyes as you sink your teeth into your lower lip so hard you can taste salt when you release it. When will I see you again? I will find you, he says at length. When this is over, I will find you. I'll send for you. It kills you to pull away, but you do anyway, forcing yourself to meet his eyes. Do you promise? You ask. You gaze into his deep, dark eyes, possibly for the last time, and the realization only makes it worse. You'd always feared that something like this could happen, but it was something you forced yourself not to think about. And now it was here, and you weren't the least bit prepared. He dips his head in the smallest of nods. He would come back for you. Whatever happened, he would survive this and make it back to you. You had never seen him on the battlefield, but he was indestructible. You knew that. He was one of the most powerful men in the whole of the galaxy. No one could possibly defeat him. I love you, you whisper to him, pressing your lips against his. He kisses you back with more urgency and less passion than you would have liked, sweeping your hair back out of your face with one hand as he does so. As do I, he whispers back, and you blink at him in confusion. I love you, he says, as if it wasn't clear the first time. Your eyes search his, and you can tell that he means it. He really means it. Suddenly you can't bear to let yourself to be torn from him. You push yourself into him, kissing him urgently, and he picks you up. Your legs twist around his waist as he carries you into the bedroom. This needs to be fast, he says, removing only a small amount of clothing and armor so that you could have better access to him. Okay, there's a quick bit of not safe for work here, where readers, just like before, trying to make this last, trying to remember every detail, trying to remember the way her skin sings when he touches her. All that fun stuff. You put your hands on either side of his neck as you caress his tender skin with your thumbs, looking into his eyes. I don't want to go. I'll find you, he says. You hear the strength and conviction in his voice, but you don't know if it's there because he really means it or if he's saying it for your benefit. I will tear this galaxy apart to find you again, I promise. You close your eyes and look away as a single tear drips down your flushed cheek. Don't make promises you can't. I promise, he says firmly, giving you an extra squeeze of reassurance. This makes you smile as you wrap your arms around him, kissing his neck. You know you don't have a lot of time, but the way he shifts uncomfortably underneath you, and so you quickly sit back up and plant a firm kiss against his lips. I will be there, you tell him. I'll be waiting for you. Please keep yourself safe. He looks back at you and nods, his face solemn. His fingers brush against yours as he heads back into the living room. Pack your things quickly. Take your staff. Continue to train yourself. I expect you to be able to best me by the time I return to you. You know what he's doing, but it only makes it worse. I love you, you whimper as he reaches for the helmet. He wraps one arm around you, his other hand cupping your face as he kisses you deeply, intensely. Will he ever kiss you like this again? How long would it be until he did? You didn't have a clue. Tears are flowing freely down your face now, but you don't even care. I love you, he says, and he sounds nervous saying it, but he doesn't know the next time he'll be able to say it either. Maybe he's only saying it now because you want to hear it, but either way, you appreciate what he's trying to do. It doesn't even matter what he says anyway. You know how he feels about you. Please stay safe. His gloves are on and his face disappears beneath the helmet. Your eyes drop to the floor. That's not the way you want to remember him, and he turns to go. Kylo, I love you, you call after him, your voice breaking and choked with sobs, but he doesn't turn around as he leaves. You know he can't, and you raise the back of your hand to your mouth as you release a shuddering sob before you rush into your room. You gather a few things into a small pack, taking a few clothes, your datapad, and a few of Sadie's books that you had to admit that you were growing quite fond of. Kylo had given you a sling holster for your staff so that you could easily take it with you to your self-defense classes, and so you slip it over your head now, adjusting the straps over your body as you slide the staff into it. Struck with a sudden idea, you go through his things and pull out two of his black scarves. You pack one away for safekeeping and wrap the other one around your shoulders, leaving enough material to pull a whole hood over your head, just like he did. Hopefully he wouldn't mind too much, but you needed something, anything, to remind you that he was real. That this was real. The doors open again as you slide your pack onto your back and a stormtrooper walks through. Are you ready to go? You recognize the voice through the helmet immediately. Ladson? You ask quickly. You hadn't seen him in quite some time, but you figured that was just because Kylo had been around more lately. Kylo is sending me off the base. It isn't safe here. I know, he says quickly. I'm your pilot. What? You ask blankly, tilting your head to the side in confusion. Are you all set? He asks urgently. We need to leave. Quickly. You nod your head, letting your eyes take one final sweep around the room. You liked it here now. You didn't want to leave. But you didn't have a choice. You suck in a breath and wipe away the tears furiously with the backs of your hands. You had to be strong now. You could do this. I'm ready. He nods his head. Follow me. You follow his fast pace as he makes his way through the base. There are many stormtroopers crowding the corridors, but you stay close behind Ladson. Idly, you realize you're not going to have time to say goodbye to Captain Phasma, and you wish you would have told Kylo to tell her to stay safe as well, but there hadn't been time. You hadn't thought about it, and you figured you were going to wish you had time to do a whole lot of other last-minute stuff aboard the base before you left. You could let a million different regrets hit you later, but not now. You had never really taken the time to inspect the inside of the hangar before. It was a large room, no, ginormous, and there were ships everywhere you looked. You stood there, taking it all in, as Ladson turned to speak to a trooper on his left. You could barely hear them above the sound of stormtroopers running all around you, above the roar of engines powering up. You could see the other stormtroopers looking over at you, and for a moment you wondered if you should be glad that you were wearing Kylo's scarf the way he did, clearly identifying yourself as his, as the stormtrooper steps aside to let you pass. Follow me, quickly, Ladson commands, his voice full of authority as he leads you to a ship. He gets inside and you quickly follow him into the co-pilot seat, staring at all of the buttons and switches and levers and knobs that surround you. You gulp but stay quiet as he toggles a variety of switches, hits a few buttons, and slowly the ship begins to rise into the air. Ladson goes back and forth over the comlink with what you guessed was a military flight controller, reading off numbers and codes to her before she grants you permission to leave. You fly out into a metal-walled trench in the planet, and Ladson pilots you up and over the opposite wall before leveling off and flying in a circle, exchanging one last set of numbers with the controller. There's a brief pause, and then, with a hint of finality, "Very well, LN 2829, opening shield corridor in your sector, Starkiller Base signing off." Your breath catches in your throat, and you can feel your heart beating rapidly in your chest. Your fingers close around your staff through the holster, and you cast one longing look back at the base before the ship rises steeply. It takes off into the darkness of space. "No," you whisper after a moment, as the reality of the situation finally sinks in. You weren't going to step foot back on Starkiller Base ever again. You weren't sure how you knew, but somehow you were sure of it. "No, no, no!" Ladson glances at you nervously, finally bringing himself to tear off his helmet. "Are you okay?" You're starting to cry again, so hard you can barely speak. "Kylo!" "He's going to be okay," he says dismissively. It doesn't make you feel any better, and you continue to cry loudly. "He's going to be okay," he repeats. "That's why he let you go, right? To protect you? Now we can fight without worrying if you're in any danger." You nod your head quickly. That was true, but the fact that you mattered enough to him for him to send you away in the first place meant more than it should have. It didn't help that he told you that he loved you. Twice. Of course, the first day he would say it was the day when you were never quite sure if you would ever see him again. "He said he'd come back for me," you tell him. You're aware of how stupid that sounds, but you just can't help yourself. "Then he'll come back," Ladson says. He sounds far too sure of himself. How could he be so sure when even you weren't? It gives you time to cry, but you don't want to cry. Not now. Kylo would probably hate the fact that you were sobbing over him like a child, but you couldn't help yourself. He wasn't around to see you right now anyway. Ladson stays silent as he flicks a few more switches, and you recognize the signature sound that meant that you were about to jump to hyperspace. Outside the windows, you can see stars slowly stretch into lines radiating out from a point directly in front of you before they blend into what look like a swirling blue tunnel through space, but you have to close your eyes and look away. Your vision is too blurry from your tears, and you know looking at it is only going to make you dizzy, so you turn to Ladson instead. He looks different since the last time you saw him. Older, more mature, more composed. "So, when did you learn to be a pilot? You never told me you could fly a ship." "I can, but only this one," he explains. "As you saw in the hangar, the First Order has all kinds of ships, but Kylo Ren specifically ordered them to train me on this crew transport in the event you needed to be safely escorted off base. Just like now, since its only purpose is to travel from point A to point B as fast as possible. So, basically, I can pilot a ship, but only this one." He tilts his head to the side in consideration. "Although from what I've heard, I guess I could technically fly a TIE fighter or one of those troop transports, but they handle differently and it would probably be a wild ride." He tries to smile at you, but you just shrug your shoulders. "Besides, I could have only ever flown us home on this specific ship since I never actually learned how a hyperdrive works." You say loudly, gesturing to the swirling vortex outside. "What's that then?" Ladson just lets out a little chuckle. "There wasn't enough time to teach me the math for it, so they pre-programmed the coordinates for home and overrode some controls, so all I had to do was press that big blue button right there and it would take us back." You glance at the button he had pointed to with his chin, but it still really doesn't mean much to you. "But why?" you ask, still confused. "I told you. Kylo Ren had me specifically trained in the event that you would need to be safely escorted off the base," he explains. "He left me explicit instructions. I am to stay by your side and keep you safe at all times. I have been trained in numerous types of combat, and I am ready to put my life on the line to protect yours." He says this so stiffly, so robotically, that you're almost not quite sure you're still talking to Ladson. You blink, unable to comprehend what he's saying. "Kylo ordered you to protect me?" "That is correct." He doesn't look at you, and you gaze at his profile in the dim light. "But you're still you, right?" you ask quietly. "Last time I checked." He looks over at you and winks, and you let out a shaky breath that you hadn't realized you'd been holding. You brush your hair out of your face with one hand. You never thought you'd be headed back to your academia. It was a few-day journey, and you couldn't stand the wait. Would you see Sadie there? How would she react to seeing you and Ladson again? But right now, you can't think about Sadie. Instead, your thoughts drift back to Kylo as you think about all the ways he seemed to surprise you. You never thought he would rescue Sadie, and you never thought he would have trained Ladson to pilot a ship or to be your own personal bodyguard, but then again, you never thought you would ever hear him tell you that he loved you either. Did he no longer view loving you as a weakness? Was he finally beginning to see real affection for another human being as a strength? You can't help but laugh to yourself. You certainly felt weak right now, your face red and stained with tears. You pull his scarf tighter around you, pleased that it still smells like him. He had a subtle smell, and you didn't know how long it would last for once you got back to academia. You feel like you're about to cry again, but you have no more tears. They won't come. He'll be okay, won't he? You ask quietly. He'll be fine, Ladson replies. He sounds a lot more sure than you feel, and you wish you had that much unwavering confidence in him. You had forgotten what Kylo Ren looked like with the mask on, how intimidating and frightening he seemed to everyone around him. You would come to know him as the person living beneath the mask, the person who had fears and doubts, the person who could be emotionally vulnerable, the person who could give and receive love. And, as it turns out, he was the sort of person who could love, selflessly, sending you away for your own protection, putting your safety over his desire to keep you near him. You couldn't help but regret the bitter irony of the situation. He had proven that his love for you truly was selfless and pure by sending you away, and now you didn't know when you were going to see him again. You didn't know how to deal with that sense of loss. You truly didn't. Will we be fine? You ask him, your voice catching at the end of your words. He reaches his gloved hand towards you, and you take it. It's not as big as Kylo's hand, or as warm, but it's a comforting gesture nonetheless. He looks back towards you, his eyes meeting your own. We're going to be fine.